Good morning, Anjali.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, so we will be having Aria meet with us. Subject cannot come to class today. She has something that's going on with her home. Uh, so anyway, we're gonna do just you and I and Aria. Okay, as soon as she joins us. Okay.
I do.
Let's see. Okay. I know we're always a couple minutes early. My coffee. How are you doing today, Anjali?
I'm fine, sir.
Like, can you turn your volume up a little bit? Your volume.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, can you hear, sir?
Yeah, it's still a little bit low. Okay. It's okay.
Okay.
Now I'm waiting for Aria. So she should be here. So what I'll do is I'll just start explaining some things and then she can join in. Okay. Did you get a chance to look over that different levels of thinking?
Yes, sir. That we told yesterday, verbs used in thinking.
Well, let me do something here. Well, I need to adjust my volume maybe. Okay. 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 So what we'll do is we'll go ahead until we have Aria here. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a question and analyze the question and then attempt together to write an opening paragraph. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I had done one already to the specific question. So, oh, here she is. Okay. Good morning, Aria. Or good evening. I keep
Good evening,
saying.
sir. Hi, sir.
Hi. Okay, so subject won't be able to join us today because she has something that she's taking care of at her home. So
Okay.
so it'll just be the three of us. What we're gonna do is first of all I was asking Anjali if she had read the information on the 6 different ways of thinking, levels of thinking. If you had read that and studied that any. Were you able to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and I'm going to open up this my other screen in a second, and we're going to be looking at considering all these different things we talked about yesterday, because we did a lot of reviewing and we did a lot of going over a lot of different things that you've done before and trying to put everything in perspective. Like I was explaining yesterday, when a musician plays an instrument or sings and they're reach a professional kind of abilities and skills and everything. It's not just talent that they have, but it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of study, and a lot of understanding music principles and music ways of notation and all the different aspects of music. So that's the same thing in writing, where we all have, when you're writing, a really good writer has all those skills to be able to do all these things like cohesiveness and coherence and have good vocabulary, have good ways in which their grammar is proper and effective, and all the different aspects of using connecting words and all the different things that we talked about. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to this other screen, and we're going to be talking about. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me back up here a little. I'll show you what I got on my board here this morning. Okay. Oops. Sometimes it's a little slow. Illustrator uses a little bit more virtual memory, so because there's a lot more information that's coming up on the screen. Okay, so what I've done is I got 3 different panels here. Okay, this panel is what I just sent yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this one you already have, but I also reposted that here, and then I showed you the other levels of thinking and the coherence and cohesion part of it. Okay, so what we're going to do is what I put on the left side here are references, all this. So it's things to keep in mind, maybe to refer back to, especially some of these other things that I wrote about. One other thing is I had written this sheet here. I wanted to explain something to you about this. Remember we talked about this sheet, and I was looking at it, and I realized that it's really good for type 1 questions because you're describing a process, cause and effect and steps and the ways that things progress or digress or information that you put together that follows this kind of format. And I didn't think that we really needed to. It's sort of like we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Okay. It doesn't really quite work together as much as otherwise. So I wanted to tell you that I got to looking at that a little closer, and it really will help us when we do the process type 1 questions.
Okay.
So because we have enough to go by right now from what we've been talking about in the last couple of days, especially yesterday, and about these different things that we can remember and use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where we were yesterday, and we'll look at this in a second. But what I want, well, let's go over this chart. Maybe that's important first. Okay. Okay. So let me get a pen and a color. Okay. Okay. So basically, you see the references, the levels of thinking, and then this flow diagram that I had made that shows how how you can organize and structure your essay, and then coherence and cohesion. That it really generally comes from that other chart, which is this chart right here. Okay, that's and then cohesive devices are also some things that are part of one of the things that I had sent you. But it's just a reminder that there's things like adding similar, in addition to, in contrast, for example, all the different connecting kind of words. And then I just put a little thing here saying don't overuse it. Oh, that's linking. Wait a second. Let me fix that. Don't overuse linking words.
Okay. Reading needs a place.
In other words, it can be like really annoying if you read something that says and, however, moreover, here,
Yes.
hereto, therefore. You know, those kind of words, they're good to use strategically. That means you use them in places that are very, um, very necessary and to do in order to connect ideas or compare ideas and contrast ideas, things like that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Um, so let's go over this part of it then. Okay, so these are the stages for writing, and what I've done here, and mainly what I'm trying to do is down here, we're gonna do today, and maybe beginning on Tuesday, we will start doing, today we're gonna do writing the introduction right here,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
We're gonna look at what we need to do and incorporate or include, and how we're gonna include those items and everything in order to state our thesis based on what we see the question says and analyzing it. So the first thing is when the first thing we always talked about was analyzing the question. Okay. So when we go and do this question today that I had posted yesterday that we are going to work on, we're going to go through this process,
Okay.
okay, in order to come up with a paragraph, an opening paragraph. Okay, so you analyze the question. So that means you underline the key words and phrases in the question. The second thing is we're going to identify the parts of the question. And the third thing is to begin to plan your response. In other words, you start thinking about all, you know, ideas start to come in your mind about what the question is stating, and some of the the things that it's saying about a certain subject, and you get an idea in your mind how you want to respond to that. Okay, and then you have to make sure and double check that the way you're thinking is comes to your
Correct.
ideas, that they answer the question, that you understand what the question is asking, and that uh, if what you're thinking is a little different, but it's something that the question can help, that the question provokes an idea or proposes an idea that you want to use as part of your argument, uh, you know, then that's good, okay? But just make sure that you're always answering the question. Okay, restate the question. That's like paraphrasing and using synonyms. Synonyms. That's a hard word for me to say. I don't know why. It always has been. Okay. Synonyms. Synonyms. Okay.
Synonyms.
Cinnamon. You know, we eat a lot of cinnamon. You know. Okay. Okay. So anyway, use different vocabulary. In other words, don't, you know, you don't want to get to where your essay is using the same kind of words all the time. You want to kind of get some flavor to it. You want to give it some variation, paraphrasing what you want to say. Maybe you can think of a better way to say it. Okay. Uh, and use in some of the words, you know, like I said, you can look up words in the dictionary and the thesaurus and look at synonyms and words that may be more appropriate or better to use. Okay. Now, when you're on the test and everything, you're not going to have time to do all that. Okay. So, so, so you're basically going to have to build up a mental library of ideas and ways in which you can think quick on what words you can substitute for another word or a phrase or paraphrase something quickly. Okay. So it's just a skill that you have to develop by practice and building on your vocabulary. Okay. Uh, that will cohere with your thesis. In other words, these words all have to be relevant to the subject that you're talking, how you're talking about the subject and what you're trying to, the claims you're making, the argument you're making in your thesis and what you're trying to propose. Okay. And then your response to the question, you disagree or disagree. You state your argument of disagreement that connects your agreement, that's or. Okay. Sorry about that. Or disagreement that connects with the context for your opinion. In other words, you want to give a context to, I'm agreeing because I believe that this is different than what the question, what they're saying in the question, because I think differently, or I see some things that I disagree about pertaining to what the question is stating. Okay, and then context for your opinion. There's some, very simple kind of background information to help you to explain or to show that what you're saying in your opinion or how about to say it begins to give some validity or some evidence of what you're going to say in the body of your work, which leads into the main body of the work. So plan your ideas over here, plan your ideas, group for sequential ideas. Make sure that when you're thinking and planning that you remember everything that's in the body has to be in a sequence that corresponds to what you're making in your opening paragraph. And respond to all parts of the question. Make sure that you look at the question, like I said, that you understand the question and what it's asking, and make sure your opinion is clear. Don't be vague, don't say something like, well, I like fruit, and even though some people don't, you're going to have to say something more clear about that. The delicious taste of fruit for me and its nutrition is important to me, even though some people don't like it. Okay, so you have to be a little bit more specific. Okay, you understand all that? Are there
Yes, sir.
any doubts, questions?
No.
Okay, you understand what I'm trying to do now is that I always say this word. I mean, this the sum parts of the whole. So, in other words, all these parts add together to make something coherent and cohesive, to make it a complete kind of expression of an idea or ideas. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay. So here's the question. Okay, remember the first thing I said that we need to do, I just said, is we need to analyze the question and break it down into parts and underline keywords. So let's do that first, okay? So okay, I really should do this because I go over here for right now. Okay.
Okay.
I didn't want you to see what I did. Okay. I got too many things in the background. Let me make sure that I gotta go to the levels and get this. Okay. Okay. Whoops. Get this up here somewhere. Okay. Sometimes you get these levels in the background if you don't lock them. What happens is that everything's is selected, and you don't want to do that. Okay. Hmm. Oh, well, that needs to go up there. Let's see. Now, now I can look. Oops. Well, that's okay. When a country develops its technology, we're going to go back up to here. When a country develops its technology, the traditional ways of life die out. It is pointless to trying to keep them alive. Okay, so let's look at that statement. What are the key words?
The country.
Tech, country,
Country
that's
develops
technology,
technology,
traditional ways of
traditional ways of life
Okay,
die out.
diet.
okay, die out. Okay,
Pointless
Pointless to try.
try
Alive.
and keep them.
alive.
Okay, let's look at it a little differently. I mean, a little bit more specifically. So how many phrases are there uh, in this part of it? In this part, how many?
Yeah.
Pointless to try.
Okay, when a country develops a technology,
Technology. Yeah, one.
the
Traditional ways of life
Ways of
die out
life
too. And
Pointless to try.
and then
pointless.
that's the third one.
Okay.
Okay. So when you look at this, it says when. Okay, so that signals that there's a cause and effect. So the cause is when it develops this technology, and then the effect of that, or consequences, or outcome of that, is that traditional ways of life die out. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's stating a fact basically, a general fact. It's not based on any scientific evidence within the question, or the question may refer to. But what it's doing, it's making a claim that that based on common knowledge, that when a country develops its technology, everybody kind of understands that a lot of traditional ways of life die out. Okay. Now, then they state the opinion. It is pointless to try to keep them alive. And so that's what, based on what they say here, then you're going to, in what they ask here, you have to ask if they're asking you if you disagree or disagree with that statement. Okay, based on the knowledge and the facts. Remember I said that there's knowledge involved. You kind of have to, when you look at this question, you kind of get a picture in your mind, of technology, and you can see that some experiences that you might have had or remember, or seen changes in the way things are done, especially with technology and the phone, and some of the ways in which, like a traditional way of communicating in the past that's dying out is writing letters.
Yes, sir.
People don't write letters like they did.
Yeah.
Another thing is that people used to, I mean, these are just everyday kind of things. People used to, instead of uh, um, instead of reading books, you go on
Either.
Google and you read an article about something
Yeah.
to learn about. So things have changed a lot, and those kind of. But it's also talking about cultural and traditions like families have in communities and in different parts of culture seem to get lost. Okay.
That's the
So,
thing.
when you say this, so let's look at this now. Let's lower this a little bit. Um, so say that you want to, what would, So you want to say, do you agree or disagree?
Agree, sir. I agree with the
Agree,
statement.
sir.
Do you agree with the statement that it's pointless to try to
Yes,
keep them alive? Okay. What about you, Anjali?
Yes, sir. I too agree with the statement, sir.
You agree? Well,
Yes, sir.
I disagree.
why, sir? Why?
Huh?
Yeah, there is.
That's how I would see, because I don't agree, I would have to explain why I don't agree.
Okay.
Uh, I agree to some extent,
Okay.
but I don't think it's pointless to keep certain traditions. I understand. Say,
Okay.
for
Okay.
instance, if people forget how to read, and all of a sudden the electrical grid goes down, right? And nobody can use their phones or computers anymore. So what are you going to do if you don't know how to read anymore? You know, you don't have any more books anymore, or you forgot how to write because those traditions are have been lost. So you want to keep some of them alive because there may be a need for them if under certain uh, conditions where things may happen that cause one not to be able to use a new technology. Or there are other things too. There are cultural things like festivals and uh, celebrations that people have, that families have, and their traditions. And sometimes because of technology, people don't have time for them anymore, and they just sort of don't do them anymore. And then the connection with families and uh, their their ways of life together have kind of gotten lost. So there are some ways you can agree or disagree. Okay. So if you say you agree, okay,
Yeah.
I told you why I don't agree. Just some very basic things. Now you
Okay.
tell me why you agree.
So I agree because in this new modern world, people are not using any traditional methods. For example, as you said, use of electronic gadgets or e-journals, like etc. And they were not using any traditional methods. And I think this condition will escalate in future too. They won't depend on traditional methods for meeting their daily needs. And if we and I think it's pointless to try and keep them alive because no one will use that. Everyone, nobody has no time, so they will follow the easiest methods, which are which we are able to do with the help of technology.
Okay, now let me respond to that. Okay.
Okay.
You're basically saying, from what I'm hearing, is that the fact is that some of the obsolescence of what people do and their traditions and everything won't be relevant anymore because technology will be more uh, be used and the others not as useful. Okay, um, that may be true. Okay,
Okay.
and that's a true statement or a true observation. Okay, but when it says, when you look at the question, it is pointless to try and keep them alive. That's a little bit more further than just stating that the fact that it's possible that the technology will make old traditions obsolete. What it's saying is that it's almost an attitude. Pointless is a word that Americans I know in English use to say
Yeah.
that it's futile.
Yeah. That's the
That
hope.
there's no.
Hope.
It's almost like I
You know,
I think it's pointless to go to the park to have,
yeah.
it's not because it's pointless to go to the park and have fun. It's because I don't want to go to the park and have fun. So it's pointless to me. So you see, that's a strong word in that question. And so it's kind of, it's sort of eliciting your opinion about whether or not you want to keep them alive or not. It's not, and you can base it on the fact that it may be something in the future that these won't be needed, these traditions. But but can you do without them in the future? Um, I mean, you can name something. Do you want to stop going to this festival or to this celebration that you always went to every day of your life? I mean, is it going to be something that you just can forget about? But it becomes part of us too. And it becomes part of a culture, and the identity of a culture a lot of times is based in their cultural heritage. Is that clear? I'm trying
Yes,
to,
sir.
I'm looking in that, we're analyzing this question and we're seeing if what the question is really asking.
Okay,
And
sir.
the reason that I took it, that I didn't agree or disagree, because I realized, and because I'm an American speaker, I can see the word pointless as being kind of evocative in trying to bring someone to side one way or the other based on your own personal preference, based other than on maybe being able to see objectively uh, if if it could, to be at some extent it could be, and it could not, and reasons why it could be and some reasons it couldn't be. So it's not a yes or no question. It's not an agree or a disagree. Sometimes it's I agree to these in a certain way, like you're saying, that it could happen and it could come to that way. And there are some traditions that and ways of working that may not be useful then. But at the same time, there are some things that bond people together in their society or in their culture and their communities that are traditional or in their families that they want to keep going. So in traditional ways of life, that they don't always mean, it doesn't always mean that Googling something is going to replace reading articles in a book or a paper. Um, so there's exceptions. How about you, Anjali?
Yes, sir.
Anjali's volume is not very loud today. Are you okay?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Or we're
Yes,
saying?
sir.
Okay, do
Yes,
you,
sir. I got.
you have anything to add? Or,
Yes, sir. I have the same points, sir.
okay. Okay, so well, if you have any more to say or anything, let me know, okay? So
Okay, sir.
basically what we did is we just pretty much under analyzed the question.
And let's take this shit. Okay.
We just did that. Okay, now I'm going to show you what I did with this question. Just, and it's pretty much what we did. I just did it a little more graphically. So what I did is I broke it down to colors. So the blue is that phrase. Traditional ways of life die out is that phrase. And pointless to keep them alive. So the cause and effect. So this is the narrative statement. The questions are usually in a narrative statement. I mean, I don't see why, and especially in academic. So, and then it asks for a response, agree or disagree. So the challenge is to look at, to break this down into parts and to address it, the different parts. So when a country develops its technology, we have to put that when we rephrase or state in a different way what the question is as we begin to answer the question and give our opinion. we have to include these things that assess, that are givens, okay, or facts. So a country develops this technology, and there are traditional ways, and what happens to them. So cause and effect. And then the opinion of the question, see, that's not these two are connected because it's a cause and effect. This is not connected to these in that regard, okay? It's not because the traditional ways of life die out, it's pointless. It doesn't say because.
Okay.
That would be stating a fact. And when you use a word pointless, it indicates an opinion. So the opinion is, in the question, is that you're supposed to agree or disagree with, or to how or what extent or what parts of it. It's pointless to try to keep them alive. Okay. So here's what I did, and for whatever it's worth, we got a little time. So my response in this question is I tried to, and bear with me because this is the way I write. It's just an example of a way in which you can accomplish these goals and objectives in the opening paragraph. And I want to show you these one more time first. So, so so here are the things that we want to accomplish in the opening paragraph. Okay, we want to paraphrase. We want to use different vocabulary than what's in the question. We don't want to say die out. You know, we don't want to say something like it's pointless. You know, we don't want to repeat those words. Okay.
Okay.
And then you want to make sure that when you state your argument of agreement or disagreement or whatever, conditional agreement or whatever, it would make it clear that that's how you're responding to that question. And then you have to begin to plan your ideas because whatever you say in the opening paragraph is going to give clues to what's going to be in the main body of your work, because you're beginning, the clues are a collection of things that you say in your opening paragraph that that formulate a thesis or a claim or an argument or an opinion. Okay, so
Okay.
so you want to respond to all parts of the questions and make sure it's clear. So let's see if I did that in this. Okay, I may have or not. I don't know. I want you to help me with that. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to do this. Okay. So let's look at this. In the rising, okay, so here's what I said. In the rising swell of ever developing technology, a country may find that cultural traditions and the way of life for many of its people become lost as a result of neglect and apparent obsolescence. So what I've done in that's my opening sentence. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I did is I tried this. First of all, here's the question: traditional ways of life I mean, that's not the question. Let me get the question over here. Okay. Gotta unlock it.
Then I can see. Here is.
So here we are. So when it says okay, so I said when a country develops its technology, so ever developing technology. You have to work technology because that's the subject, okay?
Okay, sir.
But instead of saying when a country develops, I put it more in continuous kind of tense, okay? So in the rising swell of ever developing technology.
So what does that mean, rising swell?
Rising swell, it's like the tide coming in the ocean. Uh,
Okay,
it begins to increase. It begins to build. Okay, it's it's
o-
it's sort of a metaphor.
okay,
You know what a metaphor is?
No, sir.
A metaphor is a colorful adjective or adverb. Okay, or a phrase. So you might say like a, a metaphor would be something like uh, she's as beautiful as a fluttering butterfly. Okay, so
okay,
fluttering butterfly is a metaphor to try to express in a word picture, in an artistic and poetic way of describing beauty. Okay, uh, I don't know if she's that beautiful. That came to my head. Okay. So in the rising swell, so it's sort of a picture, you know, you kind of picture in your mind that the swell of ever developing, in other words, it's perpetually developing. Okay. So technology. Uh, so it's painting a picture that technology is beginning to, it's flowing and building and moving. And so that's why I use the continuous present way of describing what's going on uh, with technology. So uh, that's the cause. Okay. And then I said a country may find that cultural traditions and the way of life for many of its people become lost as a result of neglect. So what I've done is I've saved the cause, and then this sort of pretty much. Wait a minute, I gotta get back on.
explain.
So this pretty much. Um, so that's the effect, the result. It
Yeah.
gives a clue. So in other words, if I'm breaking this down, a country may find that cultural traditions and the way of life for many of its people. So in other words, I'm not just saying that the way of life. The question says traditional ways of life. There it is, spelled wrong. Okay. Life die out. That's not wrong. This is the text, the type. Okay. So the traditional ways of life die out. Okay. Um, so so I'm just saying, instead of that, I'm saying cultural traditions and the way of life, because the way of life is sometimes um, people don't want to change easily. They have their habits, they have their routines, they have their ways, and older people sometimes don't want to because they're so used to what they've been doing before that for change and everything for them sometimes isn't an easy adjustment.
Yes.
So you can explain in your article for older people, sometimes traditions aren't able to think as quickly because it's hard for them to understand some of the technology and how to use it, so forth. I grew up, when I grew up, we used rotary phones. You know what a rotary phone is?
Pardon, sir?
We had rotary phones.
Rotary
A rotary phone, I don't know if I can draw a picture of it. Rotary phone looks like this. It has a box here. And then it has a handle, the earpiece and the mouthpiece. This is very simple. Oh, there we go again. All right. This thing sometimes, I hit the wrong thing. Sorry about that. Okay, so mainly what it is that a phone, it looks kind of like this. It's sort of like a box that looks like this. And then it has an ear. So that's like a mouthpiece and the earpiece, and you hold it up, okay? Then you have a dial on the front of it.
Okay, okay,
That's
okay, sir.
dial
Yeah,
have numbers all the way around it. And then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you put your finger in it and you go around and you dial.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's a
Yeah,
rotary phone.
Now
Okay?
got sir.
And
Yeah.
then you have,
I've seen this in old films.
then when you have a cell phone and older people are saying, oh my goodness, how do I work? Oh, all these, let's see, oh, we got all these dials, you dial and you hit these numbers. If you ever looking on a cell phone, by the way,
Mhm.
when you look at a cell phone now, and you look at this is an iPhone, but I know that on the keypad, they don't have just numbers. If you notice, they have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, 5 has J, K, L. So when you dial this back, this is a tradition that got passed on into cell phones that's really not useful now.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know why they did that? Because older people can say, oh, okay, that corresponds to me when I used to use the dial phone. So like if you wanted to dial, let's say on like a number 2 is A. So if you wanted to dial, we didn't used to use numbers. We used to do something like Highland 10128. So if you had to dial Highland, HI, you didn't say, well, what number it is. They have the number here. So H is, so you would dial 4, H, and then 4I is also on 4. So you dial 44,
Okay.
and then you dial 1, and then you dial 0128.
Mm.
So
Okay.
when that's a really good example of how a tradition is basically obsolete for most people. And I can tell you, you do not even look at those letters underneath these numbers. It doesn't mean
Yes, sir.
it has no relevance. But to me, because I grew up with it, I know exactly what it means. So if I wasn't more technically knowledgeable, if someone wanted to tell me to use a cell phone and everything, it would help me to sort of make a bridge between what I knew before and how it applies now on the way this is set up. So that's an example. So let's go back to this. Okay, so I'm becoming more opinionated about this, the way that I'm phrasing it, okay?
Okay.
So a result of neglect and apparent obsolescence. Now, the reason I said apparent is because to some people, some things are obsolete, and to other people, they aren't. Okay. Some believe, so now I'm going further with this. So I'm I'm taking what it's pointless to try and keep them alive. Remember I said pointless is opinion. So I said some believe, which corresponds to pointless. Some believe that progress is a fact of life. In other words, that it's set. It's something that's not going to change, that people need to get used to it. Okay. Like, so I'm saying that in its march forward, there's another metaphor. Okay. March forward. It means like you're going forward into progress. Progress is going forward. Okay. Society should embrace the future. They should accept it without question, and accept that the traditions in the way of life of the past becomes no longer relevant and is allowed to vanish with time. That means that it fades out. It's no longer even visible anymore. I strongly, now I'm saying my opinion in support of what I put in this statement, this statement here. I was saying this is what some people think, and what I'm rephrasing the statement that it's pointless to try to keep them alive. I'm restating it using different words, paraphrasing, using different ways of expressing it. I'm using more of a time element and sequential element of time and all those things. And then I said, I strongly disagree with this position that, in my opinion, does not, in other words, in my opinion, it does not appear to, the statement does not consider how instead of using statement, I use position. Consider, because this is a position. This is not a state of fact. This is an opinion. And so I said, that's a person's opinion, and that's their position on the matter. Okay, that's what they think. Okay, so I said, I strongly disagree with this position that, in my opinion, does not appear to consider how a country profoundly benefits from its cultural heritage. So what I did with this, first of all, I disagreed, but I also said that there's something more to that. This is the hook. It does not consider how a country profoundly benefits. It's a phrase that I used as a hook. There's a benefit to the cultural traditions and ways of life that people have. There are things that we can learn from the past, things that we can use that we don't know. You know, in art, there are certain techniques with people, how they painted back in the Renaissance, like Michelangelo and all that, that are certain techniques and technical ways in which they were able to achieve some of the effects and some of the colors that they used and everything in order to make that painting appear like it is. Some of those traditions are lost. Some of those ways of doing that, people don't know anymore, and they're superior to some of the things they do now. So like if you, the only way that those things got passed down is from that artist had an apprentice, and that apprentice had another apprentice. And through the years, they were able to keep those technical techniques and those ways of painting and everything alive from generation to generation. And so some of those things we still have now, but some of them were lost. So those are some of the ways in which I said those are some of the culture traditions. I mean, there are things, like I said, with festivals or holidays and celebrations and things like that, and in all kinds of different ways. So what I was trying to do I was trying to use cultural heritage as mainly a point that I'm going to base my argument on.
Okay.
So, so I'm not going to take certain things like certain examples like telephones or art. I'm going to talk about people in this article next about some of the things that people to do together as a family, that if they allow technology to overtake those traditions and they do with their families because they don't have any time for it, or because the attitudes of society really don't like it because it's kind of old fashioned and kind of, silly.
Yeah.
I want to use that and show how that's important in the article because people need that identity that they have with one another and their families and their communities and all those traditions that need to be kept alive. So that's mainly what I wanted to show you today. Tomorrow we're gonna. Do you have any questions or doubts? Are there anything that you kind of don't?
So,
I'm gonna go back into stop share.
okay.
Let me get some water. I'm just saying that when we talk about the things like the levels of thinking and some of the things that we consider and some trying to make a little deeper,
Okay.
this question, it is pointless to try and keep them alive. It's a very it's a little bit shallow. It's not, it doesn't have a lot of really deep meaning to it. It's sort of like very kind of naive. It doesn't give any kind of depth to that statement. So you want to take a statement like that, even if you agree or disagree, you've got to make a deeper argument about it. Okay, you've got to take it a little farther. You've got to expand the concepts and the ideas of both in responding to it. So that's a very provocative question. It is pointless to try to keep them alive. That's very provocative. It's very kind of negative. It's sort of like it doesn't consider anything except that one person who's made that statement's opinion and what they think. So when we analyze that question, and we analyze other questions, they all have different things that we can point out or analyze and see and pick up on and interpret. But in this particular one, that's how I responded and how I said things. I wanted to show that I wanted to expand some of the vocabulary. I wanted to maybe make a little bit more of a logical flow, starting out with restating the question and then taking the statement and putting it in its perspective, where I said that some believe that it's a fact of life, that this is, I'm even saying that this is one person's opinion, in other words. And then I'm saying because of that and everything, I see aspects of it that I don't agree with. Okay, in my opinion is there's certain things like cultural traditions and everything that help keep alive things that I'm going to be talking about in the next following paragraph. And what that does is it helps the reader to anticipate or say, okay, I want to keep reading because I want to hear what he has to say about that. Okay. So that was my lesson for today. And I know some other people listen. I know God in me listens to these, so and Daniel does too. So I know that I'm trying to give you some information and some perspective and some strategies and tips in order to write, you know, effectively and coherently and cohesively. So, you have any doubts or questions now?
No, sir. It is clear.
You're all clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll write that down. You're all clear. Okay. No, you're good to students. You listen very carefully and appreciate it. And, I know you get a little sleepy because it's the time of day for you. It's a little bit later, but anyway, this weekend, I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to give you maybe two or three, maybe two different questions. And I want you to do pretty much of what I just did.
Okay.
I want you to take that chart that I sent you yesterday that shows all the different aspects of writing the introduction and use that as a guideline, and then go back and refer back to some things like the level of thinking and the different things and the references that I listed. And see if you can write those two paragraphs and rewrite them like I did here. And then I want to read them, then we're going to evaluate and look at them. And then we're going to talk together and see how maybe we can improve on them. Okay, what, like Anjali might say, well, Aria, the way she wrote it, you know, we need to do this to it. Because I've been doing that all along. Now I want you to critique each other. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. And then I'll be the moderator. Okay. So so I'll do that, and I'm just going to say this. I want to take enough time to get through these stages of writing and organizing, because this is like really, really important. I mean, I could go ahead and say, well, we'll stop on Wednesday and have you write an essay. But if it takes another few more days, I want to take what it needs to take, because I want to make sure that you understand. And when you practice and you write an example like the two paragraph or the two questions I'm going to give you, then I'm going to see, you know, what you learned from it, and if you're applying what you learned, and if you are or not, and then I want you each of you to be able to critique each other on those bases also, like make an assessment. Okay. And remember, we have to kind of look through the eyes of the examiner to see the 4 different criteria that they make their assessments on. So, so we'll need to just continue to do that, because one thing about musicians, about artists, about scientists, about teachers, doctors, nurses, whoever else, it's not just they just have this natural ability and it just flows out of them. Albert Einstein once said as inspiration, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. That's what Einstein said. In other words, you have to practice, you have to develop your skills, you have to keep at it. You know, repeat, keep working on it, keep practicing. You know, a famous pianist once said, if I don't practice one day, each day, I notice it. If I don't practice for 2 days, my wife notices it. If I don't practice for 3 days, everybody notices it. Okay? So even if I don't give you assignments, please keep practicing, okay?
Okay, sir.
I look online and I see there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions, actual questions from IELTS, and some of them will get you off guard. Some of them may pertain more to a Western cultural kind of view. So you have to kind of be prepared to be able to think quickly on your feet and try to see the question from the perspective of the person who's asking or the question on the test. And then you have to be able to really work quickly and skillfully in answering this question. So, okay, I think I've said enough. Anything else I need to say? Do I need to say
No.
if I talk enough? Okay. Okay, well, I will let you go now, and I'll get you,
Okay.
I'll send you some to analyze and to write a paragraph about on your opening paragraph, and then we'll just go from there, okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay, well, you have a good evening and enjoy your family and your meals.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank
Okay,
you,
sir.
sir. Have
okay,
a nice
Thank
day,
you, sir.
sir. Bye.
Sir.
bye, bye, bye,
Bye.
bye.